into details about the monorepo, but the magic starts here in core in the scripts. We have 3 scripts, dev, build, and serve. Dev is based on Webpack dev server. So it's based on Webpack dev middleware, sorry, and basically is creates an application for Webpack dev middleware, and then it gets all the configuration. So it creates the application. It gets. I will go into detail now. It gets all the configuration, and it starts Webpack dev middleware with a couple of middlewares here to make the server to make it work the hot module replacement. Build is a slimmer version of dev, which doesn't use a server. It's not basically not, it doesn't do anything about the server, because dev is all. It's kind of it generates the bundles and it starts the server. But for production, that's divided in 2 steps. So we have build. Bit generates the bundles, and that's it, and it finishes. And then serve, it starts a server and with the bundles that you've generated in build. But basically, it's the same process that happens here in build. The bundling happens, the bundle that happens here in build and in dev is quite similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's quite similar. So let's go over dev. So dev starts, it has some options for the target, public path, HTTPS, and so on. You can start by default, it starts in development mode, but you can start dev in production mode. This is the mode of Webpack, and that's passed down to Webpack. Also, the public path is the Webpack option. The target option is because Frontity supports the generation of 2 types of bundles of JavaScript files. One for ES files for old browsers and another for modern browsers. So by default, dev only bundles for module and not for ES5. But you can change that. If you want to check, I don't know, if it works with ES5, you can pass target and it works. Build, build also bundles for ES5 and module, but also have, and it's the default is both. So build generates both types of assets in the same run. That's one of the differences. And then, so the first thing, this is create same links is a fix for yarn, because NPM and yarn work a bit different with a Frontity project. So let's let me open Frontity project. Do I have, yeah, for example, this one. So in a Frontity project, we use local packages like this one, okay? So when you do an npm install of a local package, what npm does is for Frontity Mars theme, where is Frontity? Okay, you can see here that this is a symlink. Okay, so it generates a symlink to the actual folder, and the actual folder here is, well, this one, packages Mars theme, and this is nice because it means that the packages accessing Frontity Mars theme are going to access this folder, these files. So if you modify a file in a local package, this is for development. The development works, and you have the Webpack rebuilds the bundles and so on, and everything works. But Yarn doesn't work that way. What Yarn does when it finds local packages is not to create a symlink, but to copy the folder. So it copies all the files and pastes them here inside node modules, and that's it. So if you modify a file in packages, Mars theme, for example, you are not modifying actually the node modules, and it doesn't work. So we force those symlinks here. So this is just to fix yarn. Well, this is to create the builds folder. So when you start a project, we create a build folder with some subfolders. And the next thing that we do is we ask to actually, in this case, is the Frontity file settings package. We ask that package to give us a list of all the sites. So we are more or less asking, it's not exactly this final format, but it's the list of all the sites listed on Frontity settings. This is only one site, but you can have as many as you want. For example, in our end-to-end project, we have here lots of packages with different settings and different configurations and so on. So what we do first is to ask for a list of all the sites and the configuration for those sites, like the name of the sites, if it has a match or not, packages, the settings of the packages, and so on. So we get a list of all the sites. Yes. So the next thing that it does is to generate an entry point. Okay. And this is the tricky part that, or the, I don't know, the different part that Frontity is doing. So for each of the sites, we generate an entry point. And if you go here and in the folder bundling, you see that there is an entry point. There is an entry point for the server, a single entry point for the server. So this here, this function generates a single entry point for the server because you can have multiple sites here, but a single build of Frontity ends up in a single server. So you only need a server to serve all your sites. Okay. So we generate one single server and as many client entry points as sites that we have, because those are gonna end up in different files in the static. Um, So for example, let's see the other project. So here in bundling, we have the entry points. And as you can see, these are all the sites. Okay, these are the names of the sites. This is our end-to-end project. So it generates a single server file and then one client file and one client entry point for each of the sites. Okay, and how are these entry points? So these entry points are the entry points of Webpack. So they have, they are generated on the build and they have all the packages for that site. In case of the server, it has all the packages of all the sites. And its client has all the packages of only that site. Because of course, if you have a package installed in one site, uh, in the server needs all the packages because the server is able to do server-side rendering for any of the sites. But in the client, you only want to include the packages of that site to not send packages that are not going to be used. If you run this on dev, it also has this piece of code for the hot module replacement. But basically, the the entry file is this one. And this is kind of the magic that is like, that creates this, that makes this dynamic package system work in a static way, because you can add here the packages, but they are going to end up in a real file that Webpack is able to understand and able to bundle together and so on. And there are some logic in the generate entry points file, because yeah, it's not only so by default we use index for index .ts or .ts as the entry point, but it has some logic because this can be, oops, this can be client, for example, or server. And if it finds a client, it's gonna here use the client. And also when we add AMP, they're gonna be, you can also use different entry points in your package for the different modes. Apart from the packages, we're also importing the client, which is the entry point here for Frontity. So this is core source, and here we have client, and this is the function that gets the packages and does the hydration in the client. And the server is the same in the server. So in the server here, so we have the entry point of the server here, and it's the same. We pass the packages here to this function, and this function is the entry point for the server-side rendering and the COA server. So thanks to this, the server and the client functions have access to the packages already imported by Webpack, and then, well, I'm not gonna go into detail into the server-side rendering, but here in the where the server-side rendering starts here, the server-side rendering starts, and you get the settings again. So you ask again for the settings for that specific site, but you already have the packages. So you create a store sending the packages and the settings. And here the packages in the server are going to be all the packages of all the sites, but you have the settings for this specific site, for the server-side rendering of this specific site. So you're going to create the store with the packages only for this site. Yeah, and here in the client, you are receiving the packages for only this site. So you don't have to filter those as well. So yeah, well, you're creating the store. This is for hot module replacement, but basically you are creating in a store with the packages, and an initial state that can be either the HTML that we send to the client with the state that was generated in the server, or in a snapshot of Frontity state if we are in hot module replacement, if we are doing a kind of a refresh in development. And yeah, that's the tricky part. We get the entry points, and with the entry points, well, here we generate an application. It's I think it's an Express application for Webpack, the middleware. Nothing fancy there. And this is the other point, the config. So now that we have the entry points for Webpack, we want to generate the config for Webpack and Babel and so on. So, and that part is here. So we have scripts here. Now we have config. In config, we have, well, we not only have Webpack and Babel, we also have something called Frontity, which right now it only has an output directory. I don't know. It's maybe it's some place where we have to add some type of configuration, and we add that there. But mainly, yeah, it's Webpack and then Babel. I think we are generating Babel first, and then we are passing Babel to Webpack as well. So, and Babel is very simple. It only has this file, and yeah, we are passing to Babel. No, we're not passing anything to Babel, so it's the same Babel. Or we're passing target. Okay, yeah, we're passing, yeah, because we are generating three Babels, three configurations for everything. So Babel and Webpack generate each of those generate three configurations, one configuration for modules, one configuration for ES5, and one configuration for the server. So that's what it's sent here. It's what we call target. And based on that, it generates the Babel configuration. And that's it. It returns the Babel configuration, and then that's injected in Webpack. And Webpack, it's a bit more complex here because we have, well, all the Webpack options. They are divided in different files. So yeah, we receive the get config here and, well, here, and the same. We generate three different configurations for module, for ES5, and for server. So, and for example, the entry points. So the entry points are here. So we are passing down the entry points. And this is the entry for Webpack, the webpack config.js. And what we are doing is these entry points, which are the path to these files. So here it would be Marstem client. For each of those, we are returning an entry point, and we are adding, well, the hot middleware if we are in development, and so on. And if we are not in the server, and things like that. Nothing very complex. Actually, you can actually look at the configuration. Here there are snapshots. So there are in a snapshot for Babel and in a snapshot for the final Webpack configuration. So if you want to see the entries here, for example, you see that the entry, this is for development, but there are obviously more for production and so on. In production, well, and it ends up so the build, bundling, entry points, the name of the site, and client.js file, it's the entry point for Webpack in the client. That's, if you have many sites here, you're going to have many entry points, and Webpack is going to generate one bundle and sub bundles or chunks for each of those. And that's it for Babel. And then let's go back to dev. We have this configuration, and then we pass that configuration to basically to Webpack here to generate the Webpack builder. There's one thing that we need to do here, which is we need to run, this is because of Lodash. So Lodash need let me check in the build here. There is a file called chunks module.json. Well, we generate two, chunks module.json if you bundle this in production, or with both targets, it's chunks ES5 JSON. This is generated by the client, by the client bundle by Lodash, by loadable components. So it should be here in the plugin somewhere, loadable. So if we are not in the server, in the client, we generate this bundling chunks.json file. And this is, the server needs this file, okay, to be able to make it work with code splitting. So what we had to do here, because most of the time you don't bundle the server. Frontity bundles the server in a final server.js file. So this server.js file, because you need that file if you want to do serverless. You need to bundle your server in a single file. So here we have to compile first the client, because at that moment this file is generated, the chunks of loadable is generated, and then the server uses that file and actually embeds that file into the server.js. So it needs to be generated first. You cannot do this in parallel. But that's it. Then you start the server, and that's it. And the build is very similar. Let's go super fast through the build script. So, okay, again, well, we get the configuration, the Frontity configuration that right now it only has the out directory. So we get all the sites, the Frontity settings.js or .ts. With the information about the sites, names, and packages, we create all the entry points. With the entry points, we get the configuration for Babel and Webpack. And with the configuration of Babel and Webpack, we run Webpack. So it generates all the bundles. And that's it. If we are in production, we remove the bundling folder, and that's it.